The story of Noah's Ark is one of the most fascinating and intriguing stories known to mankind. It can be found in virtually 200 accounts all around the world on almost every continent. However, many people today believe Noah's Ark and the flood are just myths or some altered version of ancient beliefs. Of all the stories in the Bible, Noah's Ark and the Great Flood is one of the most controversial. Is it all true? Did it really happen? How did it happen? And if it is true, is there evidence for the flood found in geology and historical records around the world? In this video, we'll be looking at overwhelming evidence that supports the location of Noah's Ark. We'll also end with a faith lesson about what God would desire for us to learn from this event. I really believe this video will be life-changing and transforming to your life. I believe you will be fascinated and touched by the amount of evidence that exists for the truthfulness of Noah's Ark and the Bible's account of all that took place surrounding this catastrophic event. So climb aboard and stay tuned as we take a journey through time and witness one of the greatest miracles that ever existed. Now, is there evidence today for the location of Noah's Ark? The answer is yes. There is overwhelming evidence for the location of Noah's Ark that can be seen today, and I'm really excited to share this with you. The site we'll be looking at has far more evidence than any other proposed place. It's known today as the Drogue site, but it is not new as it has been venerated for thousands of years. Now let's take a moment and orient ourselves regarding some of the places that we're going to be seeing at this location of Noah's Ark today. We see Noah's Ark National Park. It's located about 17 miles or 28 kilometers south of Mount Ararat, about 260 miles or 450 kilometers west of the Caspian Sea, and about 200 miles or 320 kilometers east of the Black Sea. Then we see the actual location of Noah's Ark Visitor Center, Drogue and anchor stones, and these can be found all over. Noah's home, that it's believed by many is where Noah lived after the flood. Noah's altar and the corrals, the pasture and the places where he could have had a vineyard and things like that. We see the mountains of Ararat. Then we have Mount Ararat. Then we have this amazing site called the Wall of Heaven, a place called the Crow Won't Land, a village called the Village of the Eight, and we have a stele that has been found and an Ostracon. So these are the places that we'll be looking at in this location of Noah's Ark. We'll now look at the history of this Drogue site and see the overwhelming evidence supporting it as the best candidate for the location of Noah's Ark. In recent years, it has been named after the Turkish army captain İlhan Drogue, who shot an aerial photo of the site while on a mapping mission for NATO in October of 1959. Drogue informed the Turkish government of his discovery, and a group from the Archaeological Research Foundation, which included George Vandeman, İlhan Drogue, and Arthur Brandenberger, professor of photogrammetry, surveyed the site in June of 1960. After 2 days of digging and dynamiting inside the boat-shaped formation, the expedition members found only soil and rocks. Their official news release concluded that there were no visible archaeological remains and that this formation was just a freak of nature and not man-made. However, long before Drogue photographed this site, there is evidence going back thousands of years of people venerating this area. We see evidence of carvings, writings, relics, a stele, ostraca, drogue stones, name locations, the size and shape of the ark in the landscape, and so forth. This evidence begins with Noah and continues to the early Christians, the Crusaders, and later. It all attests that this site seems to be the genuine place of Noah's Ark. After Drupanar's time, the site lay dormant for some time and ignored until 1977, when interest in it was renewed again and promoted by biblical researcher and explorer Ron Wyatt. Throughout the 1980s, Wyatt repeatedly tried to interest other people in the site, including Ark hunter and former astronaut James Irwin and creationist John D. Morris. In 1985, Wyatt was joined by David Fossil and geophysicist John Baumgartner, who went on an expedition, and this is recounted in Fossil's book, The Ark of Noah. As soon as Fossil saw the site, he exclaimed that it was a shipwreck. Fossil brought along state-of-the-art ground-penetrating radar equipment and a frequency generator. He put it on a wavelength setting for iron at the site and searched the formation for internal iron.
I said that looks like iron, okay? Right under this stake right here, and we get a strong signal from it. Okay?
Okay.
Fossil and the team state that the ground penetration radar revealed a regular internal structure beneath the surface. Fossil believed the team found the fossilized remains of the upper deck and that the original reed structure had disappeared. In the nearby village of Arsap, they examined so-called drogue and anchor stones that they believed were once attached to the ark. Now, drogue and anchor stones were common in ancient ships and hung down below to stabilize them in the rough waters of the open seas. These drogue stones here are massive in size and are believed to be from Noah's Ark. Fossil kept repeating that no matter what the experts said, there was too much evidence at the Drupanar site for it to be dismissed. He remained convinced it was the fossilized remains of Noah's Ark. Due to the amount of evidence, in 1987, the Turkish government declared the site to be Noah's Ark, and a visitor center was constructed. It was preserved and called Noah's Ark National Park. From 1987 to 1997, Ron Wyatt and others like Alan Roberts and David Fossil continued to research the site. It should be noted that Ron Wyatt was the most influential person and worked the hardest and was the most involved in the research and promotion of this site. In 1998, Fossil died, and in 1999, Wyatt died as well. In 1997, Andrew Jones visited this site and later would become one of the main researchers and promoters of the site. In late 2014, the Turkish government granted permission to allow the site of the boat-shaped object to be scanned using the latest deep penetration resistivity ground imaging technique known as electrical resistivity tomography, or ERT. The scans were carried out by John Larson. This was the first time equipment able to reach 125 feet or 38 meters deep with sufficient resolution was used on the site to acquire 3D images of the structure that remains beneath the ground. Resistivity imaging is a technique that was developed during the 1920s for deep oil and mineral exploration. More recently, new equipment has become available with vastly improved resolution capabilities, to the extent where now it has become an effective tool in the field of archaeology. Using this technology, the scans appear to provide more evidence that this site is a man-made object that fits the biblical measurements and descriptions of Noah's Ark. In 2015, Andrew Jones and Safed Unai started their efforts in continuing on with the ground research of this site. In fact, Andrew is the one who has generously provided us with much of the media of the site to produce this video. Andrew is an American but lives in Turkey and resides about 11 miles or 17 kilometers from the Drupanar site. In 2017, the Noah's Ark Visitor Center was renovated to accommodate tourists better. Another renovation of the Visitor Center is planned for the coming years. In 2019, the Science Channel did a documentary on the site called Forbidden History. In 2019, ground-penetrating radar surveys were conducted at the site by an Oregon-based business called Topa 3D. Their surveys showed further evidence supporting this site as Noah's Ark. In 2021, Mayan Morrow, president of the Doubting Thomas Research Foundation, which is a nonprofit organization dedicated to investigating the historicity of biblical accounts, became involved in the site as well. Currently, the Turkish government is working on its own scans, and they're doing so in conjunction with Andrew Jones. Plans are also underway to do excavations at this site of the boat-shaped object. Now let's look at all the overwhelming evidence supporting this site as the best candidate for Noah's Ark. First, it's in the mountains of Ararat, as the Bible says. Genesis 8:4 says, "Then in the 7th month, on the 17th day of the month, the ark rested on the mountains of Ararat." Notice that the ark came to rest in the mountains of Ararat. It doesn't say it came to rest on the mountain of Ararat, as some claim. This means it came to rest in the region of Ararat. According to the Encyclopedia Britannica, the name Ararat, as it appears in the Bible, is the Hebrew equivalent of Uardhu or Uartu, the Assyro-Babylonian name of a kingdom that flourished between the Aras and the upper Tigris rivers from the 9th to the 7th century BC. Now the Bible also confirms that Ararat was a kingdom at one time. Jeremiah 51:27 says, "Set up a standard on the earth, blow the trumpet among the nations. Prepare the nations for war against her. Summon against her the kingdoms, Ararat, Mini, and Ashkenaz. Appoint a marshal against her. Bring up horses like bristling locusts." So we see that Ararat was a region, and it's upon this region and this area that the ark came to rest. Now let's look at the evidence within this boat-shaped object. It fits the general dimensions of 300 cubits long by 50 cubits wide by 30 cubits high. Its length is exactly 30 royal cubits, which is 515 feet long or 157 meters. Its width is larger than 50 royal cubits, which is 86 feet or 26.21 meters. The ruins today measure 138 feet or 42 meters wide. So what we see today is that the width of the ark is wider than what the biblical account says. However, this is explained by taking into consideration that the ark's walls probably fell outside as they decomposed and the ark settled down. So this extra width has been explained by understanding that the sides of the ark fell outward as it decayed, or also that the 50 cubits were an average width of the ark, not its width at its widest point. 3 distinct layers or decks have been discovered from different geophysical scans, ground-penetrating radars, and electrical resistivity images taken over the years. These scans reveal these layers only within the ship-shaped object and not outside of it. Now, an earthquake occurred in 1978 that lowered the sides outside the ark considerably. Images taken before and afterward clearly reveal a change to the sides of the proposed ark shape. Many believe the sides now reveal several vertical ribbed timbers used in the ark's construction. Ron Wyatt dug a 6-inch round shaft tunnel into the side of the ark-shaped formation and claimed to have found petrified animal dung, a deer antler, cat hair, human hair, and other fibers. Metal detector tests taken numerous times over the years all reveal a very distinct organized pattern of metal beneath the surface, which is consistent with the shape of a large ship. Also, 4 intact metal rods have been discovered by the Turkish government, each measuring about 4 feet or 1.2 meters in length. In June of 1991, an interesting object was discovered which seems to be a large rivet with a washer around it. It was believed to fasten the large timbers of the ark together. An analysis of the rivet object showed it was made of various metals such as titanium, aluminum, iron, and other metals. Interestingly, just centimeters away from this rivet-shaped object, the soil reveals no minerals of iron or metal whatsoever. Now, the Encyclopedia Britannica tells us that because of its chemical activity, aluminum never occurs in the metallic form in nature. It should be noted that the Bible affirms the knowledge and use of iron in Genesis 4:22 before the flood occurred. It says, "As for Zillah, she gave birth to Tubal-Cain, the forger," listen carefully, "of all implements of bronze and iron." So before the flood, they had use of iron. They were very skilled in all kinds of iron, so it shouldn't surprise us that within this ark-shaped object, we can find all this metal and iron deposits that are there. It should also be noted that metal is not found outside of this boat-shaped object. Just within the object is where the metal is detected. During a radar scan done by Ron Wyatt in the presence of the local Turkish government, something unique seemed to appear. The Turkish government ordered a soldier to dig up the ground, and a petrified piece of wood was uncovered. It was later tested and revealed it was indeed organic in nature and appeared to be 4 layers of wood laminated together. This is believed by some to be part of a deck timber. Even more surprising were laboratory analysis, which not only revealed that the petrified wood contained carbon, proving it was once wood, but there were iron nails embedded in the wood. The Turkish government also claims they have found additional petrified wood on the site as well. As mentioned, John Larson carried out electrical resistivity tomography in 2014, which provides 3D images that are quite convincing that under the surface of the boat-shaped object are what appear to be different decks and structures of a ship. Researcher Andrew Jones, along with Applied Geophysics Department of Istanbul University, believe that the results of the scans indicate a man-made artifact beneath the surface that could well be the Ark, and are eager to continue studying the location. The team believes that the new GPR data shows parallel lines and angular structures 8 to 20 feet down, and that these parallel lines and right angles below the surface are something you would not expect to find in a natural geological formation. The formation identified in the scans, according to the team, matches the dimensions of the Genesis description of Noah's Ark. Plans are also underway to carry out orthophoto photography, called LIDAR imaging, and related mapping studies using aerial drones in the region designated as Noah's Ark. Core drilling plans are also underway for the boat-shaped object as well. Now we're going to come to some evidence that I believe is really strong in supporting this area as the site of Noah's Ark. In this area have been found around 30 drogue and anchor stones. As mentioned earlier, these drogue and anchor stones were used as ship stabilizers to better withstand storms and cause drag, so ships weren't driven and tossed on the oceans. Found in this area are around 30 of these drogue and anchor stones. They are found scattered along a path running from west to east. It appears as the waters were receding from the Great Flood, the drogue stones began hitting the land under the water, and then they were cut loose. The remaining stones are generally in the area where the Ark eventually came to rest. Many of these stones have holes carved in them for connecting ropes from the ark to the stones. Some of the holes have broken over the years in some of the stones. So on the tops of these stones, they had holes in them, and the ropes would go through those holes, and then they were attached to the ark. These Drogue stones were continually used in ancient times after the flood and can be found in places like Israel and the Nile River in Egypt. So these Drogue stones were something commonly used in ancient ship sailing, and they were used as ballast. They were used as stabilizers to keep the ship stable and to keep it headed into the waves so that it wasn't tossed to and fro on the oceans. These Drogue stones are over 200 miles from the closest ocean and about 5,300 feet or 1,615 meters above sea level. They have no business being here other than that a huge ship like the Ark dropped them here. So they're a long ways from any water, and they have no business to be here other than that a large ship dropped them here. The numerous stones discovered near the Drupanar site are the largest ever discovered in the world. This would make sense as the Ark was massive in size and would need extra large stones to stabilize it. Many of these stones have crosses carved on them from early Christians visiting this site, and others have crosses that are from the Crusader period from around 1200 AD. Some of the stones have 8 crosses on them, representing Noah and his family that were saved from the flood. Several of the stones have been used as grave markers as well. One of these stones has an ancient carving that appears to be the Tower of Babel. The 3 layers carved on this stone are believed to represent the 3 levels or decks of the Ark as mentioned in the Bible. Another stone has unknown ancient writings on it that have yet to be interpreted and translated. All these carvings reveal that this site was venerated long ago and visited by religious people for thousands of years. Another large stone is believed to have been used as a sounding stone for measuring the depth of the water under the Ark. We also come to the names of the places that affirm that this area is where Noah's Ark came to rest. We have a place called the Village of the 8. This village was named after Noah and his family that God saved from the flood. Then we have Cargo Kanmaz. This means the crow or bird won't land. This refers to Noah letting the birds out of the ark to see if there was dry land. Then we have Ziyaret, Dagi. This means to make a voluntary pilgrimage. This likely refers to the pilgrimage of Noah and his family above the ark. Then we have Uzenguli town. This was formerly called Masr, which means to be drawn out of the water or Judgment Day. The name Moses has the same root. Then we have a place called Nasser. This means to make a sacrifice. This likely refers to the sacrifices Noah made to God in worship after he and his family were saved from the flood. Then we have a place called Yigitatagi, which means Hero's Anchorage. This likely refers to the place where the Drogue and anchor stones came to rest in this area of the mountains of Ararat. Then we have a place called Arsa. This means to capture the earth. In the Semitic version of Arsap, which is Ertsap, means to cling to the earth. These names are linked to the place where the ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat. The name for this town today is Sagliksuyu, and is where some Drogue stones, the ruins of Noah's house, and Noah's altar are believed to be located. We also have a place called Nuhun Gemisi. This name means Noah's Ark in Turkish. It is referred to as the location of Noah's Ark today, and road signs placed by the government use it to mark the route to Noah's Ark National Park. Due to the history and evidence at the Drupanar site, the Turkish government designated this place as Noah's Ark National Park in 1987. This gives more weight to this site as the location of Noah's Ark. So interestingly, because the Turkish government has designated this site as Noah's Ark, taking into account all of the evidence, this just gives more weight that this site is very likely the true place of Noah's Ark. Now also, interestingly, what is believed to be the remains of Noah's home, the grave of Noah's wife, gravestone markers, a stream by Noah's home that would have provided water for planting crops, vineyards, and animal husbandry, and a large rock that many believe was the altar Noah used for sacrificing animals to God has been discovered in the town of Ararat. The remains of Noah's home are believed to be located here in this area. It was once somewhat erected but has been torn down over the years by treasure hunters. A sarcophagus was discovered by Ron Wyatt in this area as well. Now, a sarcophagus is a stone coffin or container, and it was used to hold the skeletal remains of a person who was about 15 feet or 4.5 meters tall. So in this area were the skeletal remains of a person, and it's believed these remains were those of Noah's wife. It's believed before the flood that the people and animals were much bigger as they lived longer. The sarcophagus has been hauled off by treasure hunters and sold on the black market. However, its depression in the ground is still visible today. It's also believed the jewelry that Noah's wife was once wearing was robbed and sold on the black market for millions of dollars. Some of the skeletal remains have survived and reveal the size of the person who was in the grave. 2 tombstones were found in front of what is believed to be Noah's home. On one of the tombstones found by Ron Wyatt, it had carvings of 8 people, a rainbow, and a dove on it. This tombstone is believed to be that of Noah's wife, as the second largest person is looking down with her eyes closed. Remains of ancient corrals have been discovered where it's possible Noah kept his animals or nearby, along with a stream, pastures, and so forth that could have been used by Noah and his family. Also, you can see a large rock here that's believed to be the altar where Noah possibly offered sacrifices after the flood. There have been found in the area around the site many sea life fossils and an abundance of sea coral that give evidence that this area was once underwater for a significant period of time. This would match the Genesis account of the Great Flood as found in the Bible. Broken remains of an ancient stele, which is a stone or wooden slab erected in the ancient world as a monument, were claimed to have been found on top of a ridge near the Iranian border by Ron Wyatt. The broken pieces were quite large and most were exposed, which allowed Ron to photograph them for later piecing together. This stele contained numerous inscriptions of what looked like 3 different forms of writing. One segment was noticeably legible. This was a scene depicting the unique ridge just above the site, a mountain peak in the background, and a ship with 8 faces on it, and 2 ravens, one flying above the ship and one above the mountain. The rest of the inscription featured several animals, but the importance of the stele was that the shape of the boat was almost identical to the 1950s aerial photo of the boat-shaped object. The 8 faces within the boat needed little explanation according to Wyatt, but most importantly, this stele was just beyond the site where Ron had found the 120 by 40 foot section he believed to be a portion of the bottom of the ship. He would study the inscription more later, but at that time it appeared to him that it was marking the location of the original landfall of the Ark. Also, an ostracon was found by Dr. Bill Shea around 100 feet or 30 meters from the boat formation. An ostracon is a teaching tool made up of a piece of broken pottery that has something written or sketched on it that passes along an important story. On one side of the ostracon, as interpreted by Bill Shea, it has an inked-on drawing of a man with 2 birds. One is on his arm and the other is being released. Below it is a bird flying back that has a branch in its mouth. The other side shows a man with a mustache and beard and has a hammer and spike in his hands. Shea interprets this as Noah likely building the ark. Now, Dr. Robert Mickelson discovered an ossuary in 1998 above the Drupanar site that dates back to around 1600 BC, 900 years after the Great Flood. This would have been the time Noah's descendants inhabited the area. An ossuary is an item the deceased person's bones are put in and kept for long-term purposes. This was done only for very important people. There are also ancient relics one would expect to find at a site that has been venerated for thousands of years. And you can see here some interesting relics and shapes of objects that just attest that this area has been venerated for many, many years. Now let's look at some historical accounts or eyewitnesses of people who believe they have seen the ark over its history. The Gilgamesh epic gives Mount Nisr as the landing place of the ark. The local name for the town today is Uzingali. Also, the town just above the boat-shaped object was formerly called Nasr. This is similar to Nisr that the Babylonian writer Berosus described as being near the ark site in the 3rd century BC. Flavius Josephus, a Jewish historian living around the time of Christ, wrote, "Its remains are shown there by the inhabitants to this day." This means the ark was not on top of Mount Ararat, as it's covered in ice virtually year-round. Theophilus of Antioch in around 115 to 185 AD said the ark could be seen in his day in the Arabian mountains. Later, church fathers also mentioned the ark as late as the 7th century AD. Ptolemy's Geographia in 1548 mentions the mountains of Armenia as the place of the landing of Noah's ark. So does the traveler Nicholas de Nicolay in 1558. It was also reported that pilgrims over the years visiting the site would gather its bits and pieces of the petrified wood, which would be used as charms to ward off evil. When they encountered the Drogue and anchor stones, they had no doubt as their association with the ark. All these accounts suggest that the location of Noah's ark was in the mountains of Ararat and not on the upper parts of Mount Ararat. Now, is there evidence for Noah's ark on Mount Ararat? Over the past several hundred years, some have claimed to have spotted the ark on the upper part of Mount Ararat, but no substantial evidence has been produced. For example, Fernand Navarra claimed to have touched the ark and supposedly brought down from the mountain wood from the ark. However, when the wood was tested, it was far too young to be that of Noah's ark, and those accompanying him later revealed that Navarra carried the wood up to the mountain earlier and then brought it down to promote his book called Noah's Ark, I Touched It. There have been others as well who have claimed to have found pieces of the ark, but they have been discredited as hoaxes. Also, many claim the evidence points to Mount Ararat as being a more recent volcano that happened after the flood. This is evidenced by the type of rock formations, the lack of sea fossil records, and no sediment deposits that would result from the mountains being underwater. If this is the case, then it would be impossible for Noah's Ark to be on Mount Ararat because it wouldn't have even existed when the flood occurred. Another major reason why Noah's Ark is unlikely on the top of Mount Ararat is that the Bible and geology support that before the flood, there was a water canopy above the earth that caused a greenhouse-like effect on the whole earth. This is why there has been found lush tropical vegetation evidence at the northern and southern poles. When the flood occurred, the water canopy in the sky came down upon the earth, and the earth's climate was permanently changed. The earth was exposed to the upper atmosphere without a water canopy, causing instant freezing toward the northern and southern poles and the higher elevation mountains. This is confirmed by the fact that animals frozen intact instantaneously have been discovered at the northern and southern poles of the earth. Mount Ararat is the tallest mountain in Turkey and is about 17,000 feet or over 5,000 meters high above sea level. The claims to the locations of Noah's Ark on Mount Ararat are at the upper elevation levels, where the glaciers are found. Most of these proposed sightings are above what is called the tree line. This is the level where vegetation stops growing. With this being the case, it seems illogical and contrary to God's supernatural protection of the ark and those in it to allow the ark to rest on the upper elevations of Mount Ararat, as it would have been in a place of severe freezing temperatures, a harsh environment, extremely rough terrain, and hard to descend from the lower elevations. In fact, of the deaths occurring to those who climb Mount Ararat, most happen on the descent down the mountain. All of this causes me to question the validity of Noah's Ark being on the upper parts of Mount Ararat. Again, it just seems unlikely that God would cause the ark to rest on the top of a massive mountain with such a harsh environment for Noah and the animals to have to confront. Also, there would have been no vegetation at such a high altitude for survival. They would have had to rapidly descend the mountain in order to survive. It all seems contrary to God's nature and His care for those inside the ark. It just seems more logical that God would cause the ark to come to rest at a lower elevation here, like the Drogue site, where it's flatter, there's vegetation, there's water, and it was easy for them to survive afterwards. They could also use maybe wood from the ark for building and things like that, or they could stay in the ark for a bit if they needed to for some housing and lodging. In summary, taking into account all the evidence surrounding this Drogue site, I believe it's the best candidate. Now, the boat-shaped object is intriguing and it has a lot of evidence in it, but if we just set that aside and look at the other evidence, I believe there's sufficient evidence without the boat-shaped object to believe that this is the best candidate for the site of Noah's Ark. The evidence, it just seems to me overwhelming. It's been venerated for thousands of years. All these Drogue stones, all of these anchor stones, these carvings, these interesting objects, the names of the places all around, just all points to this place being venerated for thousands of years. Now, in archaeology, one of the things that we look for that gives credibility to a site is how long it has been venerated. How long has people been coming to this site and venerating it? What is the evidence? And this site, the Drogue site and the surrounding areas, meet all the criteria of archaeology to show that this is a great candidate. I believe it's the best candidate, and as mentioned, there is no other proposed site that comes close to the evidence that this Drogue site has and the surrounding area. Now let's look at some faith lessons we can learn from Noah's Ark. Not only the flood, but this Drogue site, this area. What would God desire to teach us from this site and also the flood account? So the first faith lesson is, do we truly believe that the flood and Noah's Ark are examples of judgment to come? Before God destroyed all the wicked in the flood, He gave them sufficient time to repent. However, they continued in their wickedness and rejected their Creator. It's the same today. Jesus said in Matthew 24:37 through 39, "But as the days of Noah were, so also will be the coming of the Son of Man. For as in the days before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day that Noah entered the ark, and did not know until the flood came and took them all away. So also will be the coming of the Son of Man." And in 1 Peter 3:20, we see how God patiently waited for people in the days of Noah to repent, and He's doing the same today. He's patiently waiting for those who don't trust Him and believe in Him to come to Him and turn to Him and get right with their Creator. 1 Peter 3:20 says, "When once the divine long-suffering waited in the days of Noah, while the ark was being prepared, in which a few, that is, 8 souls, were saved through water." And also in 2 Peter 2:4 it says, "For if God did not spare the angels who sinned, but cast them down into hell and delivered them into the chains of darkness to be reserved for judgment, and did not spare the ancient world, but saved Noah, one of 8 people, a preacher of righteousness, bringing in the flood on the world of the ungodly. So what about us? Taking into account all that we have seen, are we serious about our relationship with God? Are we right with the Lord? Or are we like those in the days of Noah that were so busy eating and drinking, living their lives, who didn't have time for God and then were destroyed in the flood? Are we like them? Or are we like people today who Jesus said would be like in the days of Noah, people today who are just eating, drinking, living their life, not serious about God, not serious about their Creator, and just living their life as they want? What kind of people are we? If we're wise, we'll be those who are right with our Creator, who are serious about following Christ, who believe what God's Word says and are living that out. So what kind of people are we? Are we like those in the days of Noah and people today who reject God? Or are we those who trust in God's Word, have received Him, and are serious about walking with Him and serving Him? So thank you for watching this video, and may God richly bless you.